think maybe a good place to start is with a headline to the letter.
Let's continue with this. President Cyril Ramaphosa needs to send a clear
message. Good morning to you. Why are the Capetonians, who are hurtful as they describe
irresponsible
themselves,
and
an 11-year-old boy from
Welcome back. Corruption is the talking point in the country at the moment.
Farmers demanded that 2 suspects in the murder of farm manager Brendan Horner be released today.
As a journalist who also is trying to protect the constitutional democracy of this country, I have a duty to hold you to your track record. So I'm not sidetracking, which is what you're saying. I'm telling you, given your history as the ANC, that you haven't dealt with corruption properly in this country. So now when you talk about dealing with corruption during COVID-19, why should we believe you? That's exactly what I'm doing here.
Righto, so we've been living in a democratic South Africa for the past 26 years. Now, don't get me wrong, it hasn't all been bad, but if you take a second and start paying attention to what's been happening around us, you start to get the impression that somewhere along the lines, we've lost the plot. Now, hold on, think about that for a second. I mean, we need to start asking ourselves, do we as a nation come with some emotional baggage? Sure. Do we somehow feel obligated, or dare I say bound by the events of our past? And has this played a role in culturally creating a society with a sense of entitlement? Perhaps. Now, can we say that alongside this and a list of other things have contributed and now as a result affected our ability as a nation to move forward? Bet. 100%. The coronavirus has quickly become one of the world's worst outbreaks in recent times. Now, despite that, it has however slowed the world down just enough in order for people to start paying attention to what's happening around them. Now, as things stand, we have small groups in different pockets of our country who've decided to draw a line in the sand and protest their grievances. Now, of course, I'm referring to what's happening with our women and the situation surrounding gender-based violence. Black Lives Matter, and of course, the guys over at Gatful.
We'll be shutting down the Cape Metro and other areas.
On the other end, you have the non-profits. Now, these are ordinary South Africans who've decided to do something about what's happening in their communities. Now, I have nothing against doing something out of the goodness of your heart. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. But these are exactly the type of issues that government needs to be addressing. Somehow people got it into their heads that they are here to serve the government, when in actual fact, government exists purely to serve its people. Now, if we continue to do their jobs for them, these guys will never step up to the plate. Government officials have been getting away with looting for years, and now they started to get caught with their hands in the proverbial cookie jar. Our laws are failing us and letting these guys get away with nothing but a slap in the wrist. If it were up to me, these guys would be getting axed from their positions with immediate effect without having any possibility of getting moved into different positions, because that recycling culture needs to come to an end, not even to mention BEE. Right now, we're living in a time, technologically speaking, where we are very advanced. Personally, I feel that we are in a turbo mode. There's so much going on, so many things competing for our attention that it can get a bit overwhelming at times. The other side of the coin, we now have the ability to build not only one, but 2 fully functioning hospitals within a span of just over a week and a half. Yet, we still have communities today without basic necessities like electricity and running water. Now, how do we even begin to justify something like that? Are we ready to have that conversation, or are we going to fall back on our default settings and blame apartheid for our shortcomings? If you ask me, that shit's beginning to get played out. We need to be doing better. We can and we must. 64% of South Africans are now forced to move back in with their parents, which means despite having all of this access, we now have people going, shit, Wait, this wasn't part of the plan. Right now we have an unemployment rate of 40% and climbing. Government's solution for this is encouraging South African youth to embrace entrepreneurship. Now, that's fine and everything, but they neglect to mention that we live in one of the worst credit capital markets of the world, which makes it very difficult for you to get access to any sort of funding regardless of the business, which brings me to the situation at hand. Now, Oliver Tambo said that a corrupt ANC will be far worse than apartheid. End quote. Now, by the looks of things, it's not hard to agree with what he was saying. You know, that's funny. You know, the one thing that keeps coming up for me whenever I find myself in one of these conversations, and people like doing this, by the way, they say, you know what, Sherwin, the systems are failing us. The systems are letting South African people down. The systems are not letting us down. The systems are perfectly fine. In fact, the systems are doing exactly what they were designed to do in the first place. You need to remember that some of these systems were initially geared towards oppression and exploitation. Our jobs now is to take those systems, reevaluate them, and to adapt them for modern times. How we do that is by accepting that the imbalances in the world are not by some divine law, but that they are by design. They are man-made by a group of individuals who are of a particular view of the world. Now, I'm fully aware that this is somewhat of an abstract topic, but stick with me, it'll get better. Now, you see, how it works is that over the years, people have woven incredibly complex networks of stories. These stories are referred to in academic circles as fictions, social constructs, or an imagined reality. Now, an imagined reality is not a lie. A lie is when I say that the sky is green and we all know that it's blue. An imagined reality is something that everyone believes in. And as long as the communal beliefs persist, the imagined reality continues to exert force into the world. Now, the difficulty here is not in telling these stories. It is, however, in convincing everybody else to believe in them. You see, much of our history revolves around this question. How does one convince millions of people to believe in one particular story? Stories like nations, money, or something more simple as limited liability companies. Now, how you get people to believe is to never admit that the order is imagined in the first place, but always to insist that the order sustaining society is created by something like the laws of nature, or even something as basic as economic systems. Now, you see, unlike animals, humans can be spun. We can be stretched, shaped, and molded with a surprising degree of flexibility. This is why we can educate our children to become atheist or God-fearing, socialist or capitalist, Buddhist or Christian, capitalist or socialist, warlike or peace-loving. How you reinforce these principles of your imagined order is by incorporating them into everyday life. Everything from fairy tales,
please, wait! May I try it on?
Dramas, art, music, etiquette, political propaganda,
all these things together as a people,
and even fashion. Now, these things are very intricately woven into the tapestry of life. It's very subtle, but it's definitely there. Now, at this stage, you should be wondering, so why don't people realize any of this? And there's a good answer for that. You see, there are three main factors that prevent people from realizing that the order organizing their lives exists purely in their imaginations. And one is that the imagined order is embedded into the material world. Number two, that the imagined order shapes their desires. And the third one is that the imagined order is intersubjective. Now, according to the code, people are divided into two genders and three classes, namely superior people, commoners, and slaves. Commonly known today for the wealthy, working class, and the less fortunate. Now, members of each gender and class have different values. These orders divide people into make-believe groups, arranged in a hierarchy. The upper levels enjoy privilege and power, while the lower ones suffer from discrimination and oppression. Giving the wealthy everything good in life, the commoners what are left, when, well, if you're a slave, you got a beating if you can play. You see, my friends, human laws and norms have turned some people into modern day slaves and others into the masters of the 21st century. These categories have regulated relations between millions of humans by making some people legally, politically, and even socially superior than others. We believe in a particular order not because it is objectively true, but because believing in it allows us to effectively cooperate and forge a better society. Now I'm going to say this again. Imagined orders are not some evil conspiracy. Rather, they are the only way that you get large numbers of humans to cooperate effectively. The reason why I feel we need to distinguish fiction from reality is that despite the cause being fictional, the suffering on the other end is 100% real. Like I've been saying throughout, fiction isn't bad. Without commonly accepted beliefs about stories like states, money, or corporations, no complex human society would be able to function. We wouldn't be able to enjoy simple pleasures like playing a game of rugby without everyone believing in the same made-up rules. You see, we need to remember that these stories are just tools. They should never become our goals or our yardsticks, because when we forget that these are mere fictions, we begin to lose touch with our reality, our humanity, and our compassion for one another. And this is exactly the sort of thing that's been happening in many communities around South Africa, but the most public one being what happened with the community of Hangberg. Now, Max Planck, who was a German physicist, famously said that science advances one funeral at a time, and that only when one generation passes away do new theories have a chance to root out old ones. Now, this is not only true of just science, but life in general. We invented these laws to serve us, and there's absolutely no reason that we simply can take them and reevaluate them and see if they are still applicable to a modern day society, or at least change it to an extent where everyone affected is taken into consideration and where we're not bullshit each other. Right now I'm just a guy on the internet who hopefully somebody shared a link to this video, and now you're looking at a person who is simply just sharing his thoughts and opinions on what is happening in his country. It doesn't really matter what I say. The more important thing is, where do you stand in all of this? What do you guys think? Peace.
You have a limited time to stay on Earth. You must try and use that period for the purpose of transforming your country into what you desire it to be. A democratic, non-racial, non-sexist country.